Okay, so normally I have a guest, but today I'm going to try a lecture format. As I didn't actually organize a guest, I've been away traveling and I've been not following my usual routine of making time for this show. But I did show, I did watch an interesting sort of lecture format where person explained a lot of things, and sometimes in debate you get stuck in fewer things. So I want to talk about a major problem facing Westerners and people, even if they're religious, they've adopted this Western way of doing the Western trap, I would say, of not doing things meaningfully. I mean, without getting into the root of it, um, a lot of young men feel incapable of doing small things, big things, all sorts of essential things like finding somebody to get married to, being successful at work, even taking care of basic things within their house, doing household chores. They feel incapable, and to the extent a lot of people are committing suicide because they feel so useless. And but they're not useless. I want to talk about all different aspects of being able to become just achieve anything you want to achieve. How do you do that? Let's start with a usual clip. I'm not sure if the clip explains everything, but I like to start with a clip, I guess, because I've been doing that with a lot of my videos. Let's go.
Successful people have developed an attitude of confidently expecting good things to happen. It's called the attitude of positive self-expectancy. It is the winner. The winner looks for good things to happen. The winner expects to win in advance, and lo and behold, whatever you expect with confidence tends to come true, even if the information upon which your expectations is based is totally false. Most successful people.
Okay, so what is the truth in this? What else needs to be added to this? This is what I'm going to try to talk about for about an hour. There's all sorts of details. Hopefully, it will come to me in the right order. Um, I'm talking from a Muslim point of view. Muslims are doing incredibly well in both professional and social elements of their lives. They're out um, reproducing most people, most other demographics in the West. For example, I think it goes something like Muslims are what 5% of the population in the UK, and they've got 10% of the children, whereas everybody else is halving. Muslims are doubling. Um, yeah, and because they're not the group that are committing suicide because they have a lot of meaning in their lives and things like that. So anyway, how does it come back to this famous guy called Brian Tracy, who's saying essentially be positive, expect positive things, and good things will happen? That is in line with the Islamic teaching, which is if you expect, but it's not just a way of thinking. I want to explain why it's logical in a second. Um, Muslims are told they should expect good things from God, who is He's the one who provides everything. We make some effort as Muslims. We consider ourselves as making some effort. We're told if we take one step towards God, God will take 10 steps towards you, etc. Right? So we don't think it's all about us, but we think that we essentially think God can help us. And if we don't think God can help us, there's something wrong with our thinking. Let's explain why there's something wrong with your thinking. If you don't expect good things from God or don't expect good things, because God is giving you so many things, giving you air, giving you water, giving you eyes, and we're probably not realizing how grateful and how happy we should be. And then when we adopt that mindset, that positive, like, oh my God, we're getting so much good stuff already. we should expect more good things. And if you don't have that mindset, God is basically telling you there's something wrong with your mindset. So I like what Brian Tracy is saying here, saying that successful people expect good things. And they're right to expect good things. And unsuccessful people are basically negative people that, however much good things they get, they ignore them. And therefore, they go in a downward spiral. They're ignoring all the positive blessings they have. Now, I don't want to just say you should think positively and then positive things will happen. I want to tackle this from many different angles. So, for example, how do you adopt a positive mindset if you already have a negative mindset? There are many tools. One is the age old look at what people with less than you have. Compare yourself with people less than you. Because often we ignore our blessings, how lucky we are. But whether you believe in God or not, we ignore our blessings because we have the human habit of comparing ourselves with people with more. And then you're never satisfied. All you have to do is flip that on its head and just mentally think, oh, look how lucky I am compared to this person who's got less than you. There's plenty of people who've got less than you that you can imagine, I'm sure. And then you start realizing how lucky you are, and what you have that you can use to become successful. So it's really important to feel lucky, notice what you have, and then use that. Okay, now the reason this topic came to my mind is I have a close relative who's got to this stage, and sometimes I need to see shocking things to be reminded of what the world is suffering from. This close relative thinks he cannot even pack his bags to go on holiday. Like, not even pack it well, just put stuff in his bag. Like, and the reason why he's got to that stage, and this is this is probably a common problem for many Westerners, is that every time he failed at doing something, it was okay. There was an excuse. Basically, the welfare state, the government, would pay him to do nothing. So he could just give up, do less and less, and somebody would help him out and sort out his problems. And then he become even more useless. So that's a really unhealthy place to. Let me. Just messaging. Anyway, just messaging somebody who might want to join. Okay, so the point is that we in the West have created a situation where even if we live crappily, we have a safety net that actually disables us and makes us shockingly pathetic. And we think it's okay. We tell ourselves excuses. Oh, life's unfair, even though we've just been given the safety net. Or we either say it's life's unfair. I mean, yeah, I often hear that, like, people say it's life's unfair, and people should do more for us, even though so many people are doing so much for us already. It's a weird cycle. The more we get, the more useless we become, I guess. and we expect more. The more independent you are, the less you expect and the stronger you become, and the more grateful you become generally as well. So that's an interesting cycle. And I want to break down like how can we overcome this? And the essential problem is lack of spirituality. Um, when you are not very spiritual, what happens is, and this is the reason I'm going to say this really quickly. If the people who are suffering the most and feeling more useless and becoming more helpless are the irreligious, and the religious people, the ones who think that they have a life mission, they're the ones who are moving forwards and becoming stronger and more powerful. Okay. And the reason for that is that they're moving in opposite directions. Person that on a mission pushes themselves every day, every moment. Like I'm doing this thing and I don't have to do it and I don't make money, right? I'm pushing myself to do something I don't normally do, which is talk more, blah, blah, blah. There's endless, I'm pushing myself, right? And every time I push myself, all that's going to happen is I'm going to become more powerful compared to the next person. I'm going to have more patience, more ability to communicate, more whatever. I'm going to gain something from this. And people who are selfish and they have no purpose in their life, they're going to go in a smaller, smaller hole and become more and more useless. And I'm not saying it in a harsh way, it's just this is it. That's all it is. And I say there are lots of religious people who don't feel they have a duty to other people. They're just religious by name. They don't thank God. They don't pray. They don't do all of that. They are the ones who are going to suffer the fate of Western habits of not being responsible, not thinking you've got a mission in life that propels you to push, that pushes you to become more powerful and better. Um, One of the phrases I like is what you don't use, you lose. So if you don't use your mind, don't stretch yourself every day, you're just going to lose that. You're going to become weaker and weaker and hopeless. Um, there are most people. Okay, so the other element of this, okay, the average person. I think I'm talking mainly to men, really, right? Because men and women, I think we should have different expectations of. And women are sort of very casual. They have a very limited role, in my opinion. And this is not really talking to women. Women have the role of take care of the kids, keep them alive. And it's really, you don't really have to think far ahead. You just have to, wow, you don't have to, as long as you don't get trapped by Western uh, dogma, which is feminism, and put your career ahead of having children, you'll be fine, basically, I guess. Okay. But for men, they have to think, they've got to plan, they've got to think big, and they've got to be brave. So I'm talking to them. And I would say to men, be careful not to become like women. A lot of TV shows, old shows like Friends, whatever, encourage you to be silly and whatever. Men, you can't really be silly. You gotta be serious. Otherwise, you can't be a leader. And a real man needs to be a leader. Women still, in reality, whatever they say, they want you to lead them. They don't want you to be silly child. They don't want you to be silly. And it's boring just being silly for a man. Okay, I have a lot of fun. I jumped off a mountain here, paragliding, whatever. But I'm on a mission always to develop myself. Jumping off a mountain was to be, scare myself so that become more brave. And is actually do my friend a favor as well because he wanted to do. I didn't really care for it too much. But yeah, there's kind of like do your duty to friends, etc., etc., different people, and you become more powerful more capable, but you're not looking for the power or um, capability when you do things for other people. You're simply doing the right thing. So this is coming back to why religious people are so powerful. They're not concerned about the result, they're just concerned about doing the right thing, because you don't really control outcomes. They Well, even if you're doing the right thing, you don't know when it will pay off. So if you're a religious person, you just keep doing the right thing. You're not concerned about the outcome, but the outcome will be good eventually. There's no way really that you can just do the right thing and it doesn't compound to have a positive effect eventually. Uh, but being useless, doing nothing, is going to make you more decrepit. You know, what you lose, what you don't use, you lose. And you're going to be losing more and more while you're just in a little world saying, I can't do this, it's unfair, and whatever. And so that's what I'm trying to save people from, because I see that all the time. A lot of people are talking about self hate. Where did I hear that from? Um, I forget the names. This is this old man. Clarkson, no, whatever. Anyway, all sorts of people commenting on the West that people seem to not like themselves. They don't like their countries. They don't feel proud of their country. Um, and they don't like themselves. They don't. I mean, I have lots of students who don't even like to show their face on camera, men, boys, for whatever reason. Well, I know why, but it's and I think we should explore that. Let's explore that right now. Why do people not feel proud of their parents? They convince themselves that they're ugly, they're a bit this way or that way, whatever, right? Um, because they measure themselves the wrong way. First of all, they care about appearance. I don't really care much for appearance. I do make a bit of an effort. And in religion, you're supposed to take care of your hair and yourself as a human being. Um, but if you do good things regularly, you're going to like yourself, and then you're going to be confident. You're going to be confident. It's just the way people don't understand the way we're designed, what we're made of. We're made of a soul, and the soul is that what dictates everything about how we feel about ourselves. It's the fun. It's like you can't. It's amazing that you can't escape any action you do. You do enough bad things, you will feel bad. Feel bad. So this is like not just a religious claim I'm making. I'm saying this is a testable claim that you can do bad things and you'll realize you feel crap about yourself. Okay. And then you won't feel confident. And you do the opposite regularly, every day, do small good things that don't think about what people can see, because if you do that, then you just do big things and you would, oh, what's this big thing that people would accept me for, wherever. Then you would actually lose confidence, because internally what you're doing is immoral. You're showing off. You're not doing it. No, you're not doing things to help people. Even if you give millions of pounds and you do it to show off to other people, you will not feel confident, because it loses all. It doesn't really have much value in a moral way, and that's what you should be concerned about. Um, so do things with meaning, then you become more powerful. But then the problem is you might not believe in God, right? Believing in God, let me make this clear. Believing in God is really simple. Okay. It's a simple truth. And the people who don't believe in God, they don't talk about the likelihood of God existing through science. I mean, through scientific debate. What they do is they get distracted, or purposely get distracted, by not agreeing with God's plan. Like, why is there suffering in the world? Why is this whatever, right? And even that can be explained quite reasonably. So the probability that God exists is certain. Like, if I've talked about, like, even a drop of blood, we think a drop of blood is just blood, it's that red stuff. Actually, it's technically complicated. Okay, it has to carry oxygen in a certain way, it's got a design, and it's so complicated that it should not, even a drop of blood, not even a millionth of a drop of blood should exist if it had been evolving since the beginning of the universe, even when those ingredients didn't exist. So it couldn't even evolve from that point in time. But if we're being like generous, right, to the evolutionary idea, it's impossible. We could talk about that. I've done many videos about the probability that God exists is like absolutely certain. All atheists, all reasonably atheist scientists know that, and that's why they insult God or insult Prophet Muhammad or whatever. Or they don't talk about the statistics. They don't talk about the statistics that God exists because they know that God must exist. So they talk about other stuff like, oh, we don't get it. We don't get why God would do this, or why is this bad thing happening. That's not the same topic. That's, you don't understand God's philosophy. Fine, we could talk about that separately, but that doesn't affect God. Is why that's not really the same topic as does God exist. Okay, you just don't get God's plan. That's fine, but God's existence is a different story. Okay, and of course, that's just one of many, many arguments, so many arguments to prove that God must exist. And it's really straightforward and very simple. It's just, I'm clarifying the fact that people think it might be complicated. It's not complicated. God definitely does exist. And even atheist scientists, I would say, mostly understand that God must exist. Okay, so when you believe in God, then what happens is you gain confidence that whatever you do, it will be positive. Let me try to explain that. So people who don't believe in God, as far as they're concerned, everything's random. You don't know what's going to happen. You might make an effort, but all sorts of bad things might happen, so that so things don't work out for you. With a God perspective, there's so much organization in the world, and the world is always being pushed. There's always God. How can I explain it? All sorts of amazing positive things happening in the world. You might say, oh, lots of negative things happening in the world. But if you just look at like how much air there is, the beautiful mountains, all of that, you can see there's a system, and with a bit of insight or thought, you realize that system is really complicated and clever and beautiful. And if you want to be part of that system, you're going to be, I mean, how do I explain this? So the system, clearly God is orchestrating it, that creates beauty and whatever, and so many positive things. So why shouldn't there be hope that you will also create something positive and beautiful if you do positive things? Like what I mean to say is that I have very high expectations that God is helping me all the time. And if you don't have that, it can be tricky. Why start? Because if you have the mindset that things are likely to go wrong and it's going to be miserable, then why would you start? It's actually quite hard to start. And let me try another approach which does not involve God. So Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, said that if you want to solve a big problem, all you have to do is start with the problem, the immediate task at hand. And you solve that, eventually the rest of the problem will get solved. Why is that a very important idea? The thing is, if you try to overplan, well, you can make plans, but whatever your plans are, you don't understand the problem until you engage with it. You like, okay, I want to make a bridge. Okay, I can imagine all the things that are required to make a bridge, but I don't know what I'm talking about because I haven't made a bridge before. And only when you start making the bridge do you realize what the problems are. But then there's another problem, and it's a really big problem that most people face, is that they're scared of failing. Now, why would you be scared of failing? Most people's reason is that they care about certain specific people who might laugh at them. That's how weak they are, I guess. I mean, I'm sure I suffered from that as well at some point. So we're all weak, really, in some ways. But if you think about it, it's quite silly. We're not doing all sorts of amazing things. We simply care about what other people think of us. That's why, and we don't want to fail. And that's most people I know in just about every aspect. They And the reason why they cares, the reason why they can put their goals on hold just because they care what other people think is because they don't really care deeply about anything that can propel them past that. There's no, so okay, if somebody laughs at me, oh, okay, probably wouldn't like it, yeah. But I've got something more powerful that eclipses all this caring about what other people think, and that's a mission in my life to make the world better for other people. Actually, quite frankly, just because I care what God thinks. When you care what God thinks, everything else becomes irrelevant and pointless, meaningless, insignificant, etc. So then you don't feel that you might fail. No, sorry, you don't feel the failure. That's what I mean. You probably fail a couple of times, whatever, all sorts of problems, but who cares? Okay, so you might say, "Oh, I might lose £1 million." So don't do things where you lose £1 million. Do things where you can sustain it. You've got to keep growing. You can't just make money. What are you going to do with money? But money by itself doesn't make you happy, right? You need to do something engaging, meaningful, whatever. So part of that is your personal growth. Try difficult things, but don't do it just for the sake of money because then you won't be motivated. Do it because you're going to try to make the world a better place. And then you have that motivation to keep going past the fear of failure as well, because you've got something meaningful to aim for. If you don't have that, then every single tiny thing will just stop you. So Prophet Muhammad said, let's come back to that. Prophet Muhammad said, if you want to solve a big problem, I'm paraphrasing, he said, just start with the current problem, the immediate problem that you face in this big problem. Don't be concerned about the whole thing. Just keep solving things, keep solving, and you will learn, you will enjoy the thing. If you're just thinking about the problem, um, you'll psych yourself out essentially. So I'm a big fan of basically jumping into things, not thinking too much about it. Because when you start thinking about it, it's kind of useless thought. Like I said, you don't really know the problem until you engage with the problem, right? You don't know how to build a bridge, so you start building a bridge. Yeah, you can read up about it, whatever, but how do you know which book is the right book? Which book is telling you the right thing? A lot of it comes from experience. So you've got to try. All right. So that was an experiment for me. I am incredibly sleepy right now. Um, Something to do with, you know, some sort of jet lag or something from coming back from the Far East, Indonesia, a few days ago. This is an interesting experiment. As I say, I can't fail. I'm doing something the best I can. I didn't have enough time or make enough time to get a guest, but I also wanted to try this. I thought this is a really good way of expressing a bunch of ideas quickly, and maybe people will get more information this way rather than debate, which kind of can slow down the flow of positive ideas when you're just arguing for no particularly good reason, which often happens in debates. Anyway, thank you for your time, and I'll catch you next week, probably with a guest. Bye. Assalamu alaikum. Peace.